Well, welcome. We're really glad you're here. Go ahead and finish eating. My name is Dan Hollingsworth. I'm the department head of the Department of Accounting, College of Business at the University of Tennessee, Chattanooga. And this is our 42nd annual accounting lecture series. And we're really pleased that you're here. We had a rainy day, and so I know some of you had to wade through the rain to get here, so that makes it even more impressive. So we're just so pleased that you're here. I'd like to offer a special thanks to Stephanie Graham, the Vice President of Tennessee Society of CPAs, and to Tiffany Pettyjohn, the Administrative Assistant at the Department of Accounting, for their help and assistance in organizing this event. It takes a good bit of behind-the-scenes work to make something like this happen, and I'm really appreciative of their help. Also, Dean Robert Dooley expresses his regrets that he could not be here today. He wants to extend his welcome as well from the College of Business. He always likes to attend these events, but unfortunately he could not be here today. I would like to express my thoughts and opinion about the importance of the accounting and financial community here in the Chattanooga region. You play such a vital role in the success of our economy, the success of our government, not-for-profit organizations, and all of our businesses. Without you, we certainly could not be successful, nor could any community be successful without the accountants and financial community. Many of you work tirelessly behind the scenes with none or little recognition for what you do, but you make our economy work, and it works really well. As I like to tell my students, particularly those in high school that are thinking about an accounting profession or some sort of career, one of the first things I'll do, I'll say, think about all the businesses and buildings that you rode by today coming here. In every one of those buildings, there is at least one and probably multiple accounting and financial professionals that make that business work. And that is so true. All the businesses we see all around us, it takes people like you to make it work. And it's so important that you are skilled, which you are very much skilled. The CPA certificate is a testament of that. But we have to have a skilled workforce to be successful. And the topic today is the changing face of the future of accounting workforce that our speaker, Mr. Cruel, will talk to us about. It's a very intriguing topic, very important to all of us, those of us in education, as well as those of you that are in practice. The future workforce is so important to the continued success of our business and our economy. We enjoy a great partnership with the financial and accounting community here in the Chattanooga area, and this 42nd year of the Accounting Lecture Series is just an example of that. And we are so appreciative of all of you that helped with that partnership. Particularly, I would like to recognize the presidents of the sponsoring organizations that assist us with that here today. I will call the organization and the president. Some of the presidents could not be here today, but certainly some of them are. The Accounting and Financial Women's Alliance, Angela Hester. The Association of Certified Fraud Examiners, Tony Sanders. The Association of Governmental Accountants, Beverly Adams. Our student chapter of Beta Alpha Psi, Caitlin Fuller. The CFA Society of East Tennessee, Mark Fleck. The Chattanooga Tax Practitioners Association, Becky Murphy. Financial Executives International, Bettina Johnson. Institute of Internal Auditors, Linda Scott. Institute of Management Accounting, Joni Manley. And then our IMA student chapter president is Andre Cleveland. And then the Tennessee Society of CPAs, Pam Mantone. We greatly appreciate all of you and all of these organizations and for your participation in this event and your help throughout the year in whatever we do. At this time, I'd like to call upon Jeff Smith to come forward for an invocation and pledge.
Can we please rise for the invocation and pledge, please? Our most gracious Heavenly Father, we come to you today and say thank you for everything that you've done for us and the blessings that you've bestowed upon us and our nation. I just want to ask a special thank you for the soldiers and those who are in our armed forces who are standing in the gap for us and providing protection for us and giving us the freedom to do what we're doing here today. I'd like to say thank you in a prayer for our food and bless it to the nourishment of our bodies, and bless those that helped prepare it and those that helped us today. In Jesus' name, amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated.
Thank you, Jeff. Well, the time is near that you get to hear from our speaker, and I'm so excited that we're able to have George Cruel here today to speak to us. I think you'll find his comments very intriguing and interesting. Just a little bit about George. Mr. Cruel is a retired partner from Grant Thornton and holds an executive in residence and professor emeritus status at Bradley University. In addition, he is the interim department head at the University of North Texas in Denton. He is a trustee and immediate past president of the AICPA's Foundation and is member of the AICPA's National Commission on Diversity and Inclusion. Mr. Cruel is one of the 4 founding members of the sponsoring group of the Pathways Commission, the National Commission on Accounting Education created to chart a national strategy for the next generation of accountants. In addition, Mr. Cruel recently served on the Association to Advance Colleges, Schools of Business. AACSB is what we fondly called it. But he served on the AACSB's International Blue Ribbon Committee on Accreditation Quality. He has served 4 terms on the AACSB's Accounting Accreditation Committee and continues as a team member conducting business and accounting accreditation peer reviews. Also, Mr. Cruel serves on several university business and accountancy advisory boards. He serves as a board member and chair of the audit committee of a global not-for-profit health organization. Before retiring from Grant Thornton, Mr. Cruel served as a partner in the executive office of the Grant Thornton, where he worked with the implementation of the firm's automated audit and control software, and where he was the firm's chief learning officer. Mr. Cruel graduated with an undergraduate, master's, and doctoral degrees from the Ohio State University, Oklahoma State University, and Michigan State University, respectively. He is an outstanding accounting alumnus of Ohio State University and Oklahoma State, and an honorary alumnus of Northern Illinois University. In 2014, he was recognized as one of 100 distinguished graduates of the Spears College of Business at Oklahoma State University during its centennial anniversary celebration, and was recently named to the Oklahoma State Hall of Fame. Join me in welcoming George as he speaks to us on the changing face and landscape of the accounting workforce. We'll take just a minute to get our PowerPoint fired back up here. Thanks, Dan.
Well, good afternoon, and thanks, Jeff. I know I'm sort of back home south of the Mason-Dixon line when I can come and hear a prayer after lunch and hear a Pledge of Allegiance. My homestead exemption, as I call it, is in Wheaton, Illinois, and things don't happen the same north of the Mason-Dixon line. Thanks to all the sponsors also, and Dan, thank you for inviting me some months ago to come and make this presentation and share my thoughts with you. It's an opportunity for me to speak about some of the issues I grapple with daily as a retired partner from the firm, and things that still excite me in my fourth quarter of life's ball game. My daddy and I, who he just passed this April, used to sit and watch NFL football, and he told me one day, he says, "Junior, you know, life's like an NFL football game." I said, "How is that, Daddy?" He says, "It's 4 quarters." And he says, "You're now in the fourth quarter." And I asked him what quarter he was in. He says, "Well, I'm playing overtime now." He lived to be 97 years and 7 days, and I hope to honor him with continuing my service to my profession. I hope what I say resonates with some or all of you in this room. I know we have an audience of academics, we have an audience of practitioners, audience of people who are in private industry and so on. But I think we all have shared concerns and shared values about our profession going forward. My plan is to talk about what I've been doing with the Pathways Commission, what I've been doing with the National Commission on Diversity and Inclusion, all of which have been funded and are continuing to be funded by the TSCPA Foundation, thanks to the gifts that come from you all and others like you throughout this country that help support accounting education initiatives, scholarships, fellowships, doctoral education support for people going on to doctoral programs who will be the next educators of those young people that some of you have in the classroom today and many of you who are hoping of hiring tomorrow. It seems just like yesterday, and it was actually a little over 50 years ago, August 27th, 1965, that I graduated from Ohio State. A fast 50 years, quite frankly, and after a very fast 50 years and a great career, I dedicated my time and my retirement to serving the profession that was so very good to me and my family. The opportunity for a first-generation college graduate, parents who were raised during the Depression, a dad who dropped out of school at 8th grade, who served in World War II, who served in the Berlin Airlift, who served in the Korean conflict, and actually who served during the Cuban Missile Crisis, who was not present there when my wife and I got married. So I honor him with these comments that I'm making today. I must give a disclaimer. I don't speak on behalf of the firm, my partners, both retired and active partners. I don't speak on behalf of the TSCPA Pathways Commission, or I should say the Pathways Commission, the TSCPA Foundation, the National Commission on Diversity, my wife, our children, our grandchildren, our granddogs, and our grandheifers. Okay, so I think I've covered all the disclaimers I need to cover. And I will be making some generalizations in the comments, and obviously, any time one makes generalizations, they're generally wrong. There's always an exception someplace. Okay. So I want to talk about the changing face and landscape. That was the title. And the first one I want to mention, and I'm not going to go through this in detail, the current release of the TSCPA's 2015 Trends Statement, the supply and demand for people going into the public accounting profession. And I want to back off just a little bit because the work of the Pathways Commission, which I'm going to describe in detail, is not just about public accounting. It's been about the accounting profession from a very broad perspective. And I'll give more detail on that in a moment. But I encourage you to go out and look at the Trends Report. The Trends Report is done every other year. As you know, and many of you who are educators in this room know, that the classrooms are full. In fact, I think seats are being bolted to the side of the walls, okay, in order to accommodate students. That's a real good thing. Unfortunately, as I'll address in my remarks at the latter part of this hour, the composition of those people that are coming into the classroom still does not reflect the future clients that they're going to serve as CPAs. those clients are not going to look like me. They're not going to be served by people that look like me, because the clients want to be served by people that look like a multicultural population that this country is becoming. And we are in a competition with those in the STEM disciplines, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, for a declining number of very bright, self-disciplined, enthusiastic young people. Okay, and that's really the basis of my remarks today, and I'll go into a lot more detail. Okay? But I encourage you to go out to the TSCPA website and to examine that trends report and other things that are referenced in the trends report about how you can contribute collectively and individually to recruiting the best and the brightest to study business first, and then it's up to the great accounting faculties that we have in this country to entice them to study accounting. Okay. The Pathways Commission, a little bit of background. I was a member of the TSCPA Foundation as a trustee shortly after the ACAP hearings in 2008. Those were the hearings that took about 11 months to happen. Paulson, Secretary of Treasury Paulson, was the one that pulled those hearings together. And one of the outcomes of the hearings was the need to examine the human capital demands of our profession. And those hearings focused primarily on the public accounting profession. And the recommendation was that the AAA and the TSCPA need to get their heads together and determine where the future generations of faculty and the future generations of accounting students are going to come. So Barry Melanson and the board of directors, Barry being the chief executive officer of the TSCPA, asked four of us, two from the TSCPA, myself and Denny Regal, former Arthur Anderson partner, Tracy, forget her last name. Sutherland, thank you, Dan. Tracy Sutherland from the AAA, she's the executive director there, and Gary Prevance, who's a professor at Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland, Ohio. Those latter two represented the AAA, and Denny Regal and I represent the TSCPA, and we met on a very, very snowy day in Cleveland, Johns Hopkins Airport, and said, what are we going to do? We have a charge. And we started the journey of the Pathways Commission. And the Pathways Commission, as Dan indicated, is to try to set the strategy for higher education and accountancy in this country. Simultaneously, and unbeknownst to us, in two other parts of the world, in the United Kingdom and in Australia, a similar effort was underway. We didn't learn about that until about 2-3 years into this process. We've been in business, so to speak, since 2009. The first year and a half, we spent studying all the research and all the publications that were done going back into the late 30s and early 40s about accountancy education in the United States. A gentleman named Bill Black, who was a doctoral student at Ole Miss, where the National Libraries, the largest library in the world about accountancy, resides, the former TSCPA library, was assigned as our staff person. He was a doctoral student there, the son of Homer Black, former Florida State University professor of accounting. He was our researcher. And we immersed ourselves for somewhere between 12 and 18 months in looking at all of the things that had happened in terms of progression in accountancy education in this country. A lot of effort had been done, a lot of it had been published, and a lot of it still sat on the shelves, unturned and unimplemented. The most famous one probably was the County Education Change Commission, about $7 or $8 million effort that took place in the early 1990s. So one of the first things that we decided was that this commission was going to be evergreen, it was going to continue. And we had sufficient funding, at least at that point, in order to make that commission evergreen and continuous. It was not going to be episodic. We were going to not only produce a report, which we did in July of 2012, but we were also going to make sure that we implemented some of the recommendations, if not all, in the report. The report was published in July 2012. I brought one of my props with me. This is the report. We've updated the report with 3 annual reports since 2012. All of the reports and all the publications, all of the research and so on is on the Pathways Commission website, which I'll show towards the end of the presentation. Okay. Our process. We wanted to convert thought action by establishing implementation processes to address the recommendations that we gave in 2012, as well as any future recommendations to transition at a faster pace the county education change efforts. And I use the term episodic. We didn't want these to be episodic. We wanted these to be continuous events, okay? And a sustainable process, and I'll talk about where we are now once I get into my presentation. The AAA and the TSCPA jointly funded this. We used a supply chain concept. We had many organizations involved, and I'll show 3 slides just capturing some of the organizations. Over the last 5 years or so, we've had over 140 volunteers representing all kinds of organizations, including the University of Tennessee. Bruce Bain, who was the first chair of the Pathways Commission, is the associate dean and now current president of the American Accounting Association. All of these people were involved representing the organizations. Not 1 cent of monies other than out of the TSCPA Foundation and the AAA were contributed. All efforts were voluntary. It's the most significant, sustained, persistent commitment of the accountancy profession to the future of accounting education that we have seen in this country. And I congratulate and still congratulate all of those people who have volunteered their time and the organizations that have supported them in volunteering their time. I'm proud to have been one of the 4 sponsors in continuing on this effort. So why is Pathways important? Well, we all know about this, and I'll show a couple slides, probably 3 or 4 slides, about higher education's cost and its unsustainable future. And some of this comes out of the Bain Company's reports of 2012, which I'll reference in a moment. College tuition is just outpacing even medical cost. And part of the issue is because of the cost structure of higher education. We haven't done business processes reengineering on higher education in probably 100 years, if not more than 200 years. There's an opportunity probably to eliminate 50% of all general education courses and still have plenty of capacity to educate our young folk. Tennessee is taking a lead with the Tennessee Promise, the free community college education for everyone who's eligible. Other states, such as Colorado, are starting to explore that as well. Because quite frankly, community college education is probably a minimum level of education that one has to have in order to enter the workforce, not a high school diploma these days. Okay. Graduation, student loan debt. If people aren't blessed to have parents of the means or other sources of income, such as grandparents, for example, they oftentimes end up with significant amounts of student debt. The amount of student debt is equal to what they would like to have as a down payment on a house. Or for some of them, they can even afford a house, okay, if they had that and it wasn't in student debt. Okay. Average last year, or 2 years ago, 2012-2013, of student debt was about $28,000. 70% of the 2014-15 graduates indicated they had $35,000 or more in student debt. That's a big bogey. Okay. The higher education financial crisis. 1/3 of the colleges and universities are in real financial trouble. This comes from the Bain Company report in 2012 on financially sustainable universities. And they're not just private institutions either, they're public institutions. My state, where I said I have a homestead exemption, Illinois, 31% cut in state support for higher education this year. Now that wasn't the final cut. There was a negotiation, obviously. Northern Illinois University, where I'm proud to be an honorary alumnus, where I've served them in a volunteer capacity for 20 plus years, has a plan in terms of their program prioritization to decrease the enrollment now from 21,000 down to 15,000. Part of that will be supplanted by the fact that community colleges will take on more students And Northern Illinois, as other universities, will become more of a junior-senior graduate focus than it will be a freshman-sophomore focus as it has today. Okay. We're at a tipping point in terms of higher education. Okay. And there's a tremendous opportunity to reshape and reinvent the industry. A couple personal comments about higher education. I served higher education institutions as a practicing CPA. I understand fairly well the economics and the financial structure of higher education from my experience and my volunteerism and so on. The issue with higher education is if it were a publicly owned company, the trustees in most universities would be sued by the shareholders. And the shareholders are the faculty, the alums, the students, so on. There's a real need for making some very hard choices at the trustees, regents, whatever they're called, level. Universities have a very difficult time making hard choice about how they're going to manage their businesses. And part of it goes with the governance process in universities, the shared governance process, where academics can jump out of the academic decision line into the line of running the business of higher education, and then jump back into their safe haven and block implementation of efforts, okay, to make change in universities. The popular perception about universities is they are change agents. Universities are not change agents. As institutions left to their own devices, they would never change. That's why the ivy grows on the wall. Okay. It's only individuals within universities who make change. And they fight to make change, okay, in spite of the systemic impediments that universities have. Okay. Okay. One of the most significant contributions of the Pathways Commission, Chapter 5, okay, was a whole chapter on impediments. Why the recommendations that the Pathways Commission made will have difficulty in being implemented. And most of those are because of the nature of the universities themselves. There's not a sense of urgency. There's a time for contemplation and reflection in universities. And that, by the way, is a good thing. As Dan indicated, I spent, as my partners would say, too much time in university. I got too many degrees, but it helped in terms of what I was assigned to do with the firm. But universities need opportunity for reflection and contemplation. Okay. That's what's good about a university. We don't have that luxury in business because there's 14 decisions backing up, waiting on that other decision that hasn't been made. Okay. The Accounting Academy, let me talk a little bit about that. We are definitely at a tipping point now. And here are the four things. The current faculty demographics. The supply and demand, which I've been studying with others for the last 10, 12 years, of new PhDs going into the academy is still out of whack. We're only meeting about 50% of our annual needs each year. Okay? All right. Business school policies, which favor MBA programs and do not favor accountancy programs. Part of it because of professional jealousy, but part of it because of rankings. The race for rankings amongst the publications. And then we have accounting and research issues, which are not helping provide solutions for the practicing community, broadly speaking. So here's the current faculty demographics. In the last 10 years, accounting faculty ranks have declined on average an estimated 13%, and that may even be higher. The average age of current faculty is about 57, and the modal point, as I'll show in the next slide, is 64. The aging professorate is a real problem, a significant problem. And I'm now 73 years of age, so I fall way over on the right tail of that. Okay. Annual accounting production, annual accounting PhD production. There's roughly about 140 a year. Over the last 10 years, half of those 140 are not U.S. citizens. And most of the 70 are not CPAs. Most of the 70 U.S. citizens are not CPAs. They do not support the CPA exam as I would and many others that I benefited from at Ohio State and Oklahoma State and Michigan State did 30, 40 years ago. Okay. Why are the CPA numbers going down, not up? You can answer that question yourself. The Accounting Doctoral Scholars Program has helped in audit and tax PhD supply over the last 2 or 3 years. We've now had 44 placements. And let me just give a shout out to all of you in this room who helped support through the AICPA Foundation the Accounting Doctoral Scholars Program. I'll briefly describe it. About 5 years ago, Billy Zell, who was then the chairman of the AICPA Foundation, who chaired the Faculty Shortage Supply and Demand Committee, said we need to do something to increase the supply of people who can teach the applied arts of accounting. The applied arts are defined as audit, tax, systems, fraud, and forensics. You got to have credibility to be able to teach those. And I'll draw an analogy. Who teaches surgery in medical schools? Practicing surgeons who get up every morning, go to the hospital, scrub down, and do surgery. Who does the research? MD, PhDs. Together they go to conferences about things that need to be solved in human medicine. And they sit in a room like this and talk about things that need to happen. We don't find that in accountancy. The gap between the accounting academic community and the practicing community has widened and widened and widened. And part of that is because of that third bullet that I have up there. So what we decided to do through the foundation was to raise money. Many of you in this room contributed directly or indirectly $18 million to finance 120 PhD students. Number one, who were U.S. citizens. Number two, who were CPAs. Number three, who had significant professional experience in accounting and auditing. Not necessarily public accounting, but accounting and auditing. Okay. There are 90 PhD granting schools in this country, of which effectively there are only about 75 or 80 that grant PhDs in accountancy. Only about 40 of them were qualified. We pre-qualified those PhD programs because we didn't think that the faculty had the competencies to be able to educate people at the PhD level in audit and tax. Okay. That didn't make us popular, but we went ahead with it anyway. Okay. We financed 120 people. Our last cohort group entered about 1.5 years ago. 120 people who had those characteristics that I described. Okay. 44 now have graduated and have been placed at the leading universities in this country. It has made a change, but only a slight change in the supply of new PhDs. But if you're going to be able to teach those applied arts, you got to be able to walk, talk, and chew gum in front of the classroom with credibility. So I thank you and all those others that are not in this room for providing the monies. It was $120,000 over 4 years, $30,000 a year. And a lot of the people who came into the program from the firms and from corporations were making significant dollars, $150,000, $200,000, some of them, and they gave that up because they had a call, they had a passion. They were called to serve and to give back to their profession. More about accounting graduates. The trends report will show about a 1% decline after reaching an all-time high about 3 years ago. This is up about 20,000, okay? About 20,000 in the past 10 years. So we graduated some of bachelor's and master's graduates at about 82,000 this past year. Again, STEM is our major competition. Their monies from the federal governments and from the state governments are going into STEM education. The federal government does not recognize business or accountancy education as legitimate, so to speak. They've never funded it, and they won't fund it because we're capitalists. We get our own money, so to speak. Okay. The student-faculty ratio, which I sort of alluded to a little bit earlier, is going up dramatically. As I said, they're not hanging off the walls. They've got chairs now on the walls. Okay. The current demographics about the professorate. The number of accounting faculty is eroding. Okay. The composition of the faculty is being made up of now more and more non-PhDs, clinical professors, and so on. A large majority of the faculty is near retirement, as that one slide showed. Okay. And the supply of accounting doctorates is inadequate, and then the demand for education in accountancy continues to go up. Okay. Other related business school issues. I mentioned the dominance of the MBA programs. Okay. At doctoral granting schools. Okay. Accounting supporting role in MBA. MBA some have called Masters of Barely Anything. Okay. This is the age of specialization. Okay. If you look at master's programs, new master's programs in supply chain management and so on and so forth, those are all specialized degrees. They're not a thin veneer. Okay. They're in depth, and that's what industry is looking for these days, is specialized degrees. And business schools have financial pressures. Accounting salaries are relatively high. The University of Illinois is reported offering $225,000 a year for 9 months to new PhDs. Their responsibility for teaching is one course, maybe 2 sections of one course, 1 semester a year. The other 8 months they have time off to research. They're on a bubble though. They have 3 years to produce level A publications or they're out. Now that's a little bit atypical. Fortunately, there are some high quality programs such as University of Tennessee at Chattanooga that don't have a doctoral program. Now, I'm not speaking heresy here, because I think we need doctoral programs, but they don't have a doctoral program, and their resources are not winnied away for doctoral education. They can focus on high-quality undergraduate and master's level education to provide people for the profession, broadly speaking. Accounting and research issues. There's a lack of research diversity. There's too much of a focus on financial accounting and reporting. The FARS section, Financial Accounting Reporting section of the American Accounting Association, quite frankly, I believe has too much power within the AAA. And they're able to govern who gets promoted indirectly and tenured indirectly at universities through their ranking processes and so on. And the scholarship that's coming out is not impactful for practice. We're not trying to achieve solutions that will help industry and the public accounting profession, as it was years ago. And many young accounting academics, I indicated, are not CPAs. They've never made an accounting entry, and they don't understand U.S. business models. Okay. Do you think surgeons would be willing to teach in medical school if they weren't practicing every day? Okay. I doubt it. Do you think MDs, PhDs who are involved in research on human medicine would do surgery if they haven't done it for 10, 20 years? Not if they understand professional liability. They wouldn't do it either. Okay. Also, professional jealousy and envy across campuses. There's a lot of professional jealousy across university campuses about accountancy and business faculty. A lot of envy because of the salary structure. I say they don't understand basic labor economics, supply and demand. If you look at those numbers, supply and demand is working. Why do economics faculty members like to be in the College of Business rather than the College of Arts and Science? Because they get a third more pay being in the College of Business. But there's a movement afoot right now to remove economics faculty members from colleges of business and put them back in arts and science, partly to help to balance the budget in the universities. That will take a third pay decrease as well over time. Okay? So future faculty, we're trying to develop mechanisms, both traditional and non-traditional mechanisms, to encourage more people to go into PhD programs, both traditional and non-traditional PhD programs, and identify other means of getting terminally qualified faculty in the classroom. Traditional PhD programs, the deans and the faculty typically want small PhD programs. There's little incentive to expand the faculty. Okay? Part of this is because the major PhD programs in this country operate a cartel in order to maintain, okay, a small group of people, a small clique of people. They populate each other's schools. The Big Ten schools trade people in a labor market. Okay? And it's true of some others as well. Faculty shortage is at non-doctoral schools. When you talk to the large schools, and I graduated from large schools, when you talk to the faculty members there, the directors of the doctoral programs and the chairs of the accounting programs, they often say, we don't have a problem. Okay? And the reason they don't have a problem is what I just said. They trade people. They hold people hostage and trade PhD students. Okay? The impact is on the mid-majors, I'll call them, if you want to use a sports term. The impact is on the non-doctoral grading schools. They are suffering in terms of getting qualified faculty to educate the next generations of people who are going to fuel this economy. Okay. The program length is also driven by faculty members who want to keep their doctoral students so they can participate in joint research for publication. Some of it's ego-driven. And the faculty member's ego is soothed by having high-quality placements in very high-quality universities. Okay. Non-traditional doctoral education. Down the road in Atlanta, Georgia, just north of Atlanta, Kennesaw, is a non-traditional doctoral program, Kennesaw State University. Okay. They stepped out about 4 or 5 years ago and said, we have identified a marketplace in order to take people who are non-traditional, coming maybe a little older into the PhD program, and get those people eventually into the classroom. And it's not a second-rate program. They teach research methodologies, they do research. They probably have the most demanding acceptance process of all 90 or so PhD programs in the country. They have a 2-week assessment program where you come on campus, you prove that you can be a student, and you write papers and so on. Most of your large traditional universities look at GMAT scores and don't care whether the students can speak or not speak the English language. Okay. One of the recent things that's happened is that the AAA has set up 4 new centers. One of the centers is the Center for Excellence in Accounting Education within the AAA. 3 other centers, one of them I'll mention, is on the Center for Public Policy. The AAA as an organization has never allowed its members to speak on behalf of the organization, only as individuals, and the AAA has never really made any public presentations and stances as well. I think it's high time, and I'm applauding the AAA as a result of this outcome of the Pathways Commission. They are finally going to start taking public positions on major issues that are affecting accounting education. They're going to get to Capitol Hill, hopefully, and be heard, as the ICPA and the IMA and other bodies have been heard. Okay. So there's a lot of exciting things coming, and this is one of the products of the Pathways Commission. Okay. I'll also talk about some other recent progress. Here's just some examples of the 2nd and 3rd year reports that we issued. They're all out on the website. Our overall goal was to build a learned profession for purposeful integration of accounting research, education, and practice. That was the overall goal of the Pathways Commission when we finally got down to work. A late professor, Bob Sterling, wrote an article, I think it was probably in the September 1975 Journal of Accountancy, where he described that research must always lead education and education must always lead practice. It can't be the other way around. Okay? We've got to be a research-driven profession through accountancy education. Okay? And that was sort of the theme that we took up in terms of the recommendation. We want to reform accounting education so that teaching is, again, a respected profession. That teeter-totter or seesaw there. We want to get a balance. We want to right side the equation again. So all of the fruits don't go to just a few researchers who can look down on those who they leverage, okay, in order to be able to do their research. The vast amount of credit hours that are taught in this country are taught by people who are not your top researchers. Okay? But people who are informed about research that is being done. The most basic level of research is consuming the research that is being done and taking that into the classroom and interpreting that for your students. You don't have to be the top researcher, but you have to be a consumer and a sharer and an interpreter of the research that's being done. Okay. We want to enhance the recognition and reward for high-quality teaching. We're working on the development of a definition and examples of high-quality teaching. We've already started with the AAA setting up the Center for Accounting Excellence in the AAA. And on our website, we've got a draft definition of what we consider to be high-quality teaching. We want to improve the ability to attract high-potential diverse entrants into the profession, and I want to emphasize the diverse. In my preliminary comments today, I talked about the need to attract underserved and underrepresented into our profession. The future of our profession is dependent upon one thing that's at a national, federal level, okay, reform on immigration in this country. We've got to get legislation somehow passed on immigration reform, okay, to allow people like 100 years and 200 years ago to come into this country and be successful and so on, like my parents were. Okay. Number of high school graduates between 1992 and 2022. We've got a downturn. States in the north, and particularly Illinois, for example, we've got a downturn in high school graduates. The graduation rate in Chicago city's public school systems is abysmal, and it's not because those students don't have native intelligence. Native intelligence is normally distributed throughout the world, regardless of race, color, creed, socioeconomic class. But we have about a third of the students in high school age in Chicago who don't go to school. They just hang out. And you can imagine what they get into when they hang out. Okay. And some of those students are the best and the brightest. They just haven't been given the opportunity because they come oftentimes from single-parent families, and we know who those single parents are. 90% of those single parents are the mothers, not the fathers. The crisis that we have, that we've got to solve, is to get the family structures in this country working back together again. Okay? That's the crisis, as contrasted to countries that we're competing with, where the family structures are more intact than they are in our country this day and age. Okay. Improving diversity and inclusivity in the profession. One of the things that we learned early on in the Pathways Commission is that we didn't have the time, the effort, and the resources to focus on the diversity and inclusion issue. Not that we didn't think it was important. So we went to the board of directors of the AICPA and we recommended that the Minority Initiatives Committee that lasted for 40 years be dissolved. Not because it wasn't doing good work, but it needed to be elevated to a senior committee of the AICPA. It is now a senior committee. It's been in operation for 3 years. I sit on the committee. I sit on the committee because I hold the checkbook. Through the trustees, as former or past president of the foundation, we finance the National Commission. We're doing some good work, working with the firms and the University of North Carolina, James Johnson, a professor there who's an economist and a demographer and so on, and doing some good research on that, trying to influence the future generation and underrepresented and underserved populations. My state is Oklahoma. There's a large number of Native Americans in Oklahoma. They run a large number of businesses, not just in Oklahoma and not just gaming businesses. They run big businesses. The Cherokee Indian Nation runs a community college, a hospital, gaming, so on. Those are big businesses. The problem is we can't get Native Americans to even come back and work in Native American businesses. They have to outsource the management. And they can go to school for free at Oklahoma State and the University of Oklahoma, but we can't get them. So we're losing potential. Active task forces. One of the things that's been a passion of mine and many others is to develop a high school accounting class. But a high school accounting class that qualifies for advanced placement through the College Board. All of you probably are aware of there's about 32 advanced placement subjects. Their curricula and examinations. They're all in arts and science topics, economics, math, science, English history, and so on. The trustees, 32 in number, come from arts and science disciplines. They do not look favorably upon business and accounting. We're capitalists. They have, though, broken the ice a little bit. They're allowing an engineering technology advanced placement course to be developed. A curriculum and an examination, that is, funded by about $5 million of private monies coming out of industry. We've been discussing with the College Board for the last 2 to 3 years an advanced placement program in accountancy. We as a profession have the resources to support it. The monies are not a question. When called upon, this profession, as it did with the Accounting Doctoral Scholars Program, will come forth. This could be a significant game changer. If we can improve the quality of accounting education and entice people in high school, okay, through an advanced placement program, it will put business on the same level as some of these other subject matters. An example, micro and macroeconomics, about 150,000 students a year take micro and macroeconomics courses and examinations for advanced placement. About 60,000 students, they're probably some of the same students, take probability and statistics. I asked the question, those people that are taking those subject matters could also be taking accountancy, and we could move them through the pipeline sooner. As Dan pointed out, I was called by the provost. He didn't mention the provost, but the provost of the University of North Texas actually sent me an email on my dad's day of passing. I was in Tampa, Florida. I didn't open the email until late in the afternoon, and I showed it to my wife immediately. Provost Finley Grace of North Texas said, "Would you come and help me?" And I showed the email to my wife, and I said, "You know, Nancy, there's something bigger happening than what you and I can comprehend at this moment." My parents used to live in Denton, Texas, where the University of North Texas is. So I thought this was almost a perfect storm. When I got my wits collected about a week later and so on, I contacted Finley, and Finley says, "You need to come and help me." I've known Finley, and Dan's known Finley for years and years and years. Okay. So I've had a little bit of insight over the last 2 months about what's going on with respect to accountancy education. Okay. There are a lot of Hispanics in the University of North Texas. Okay. A lot of Hispanics who hopefully will enter our profession. Hopefully many of them will take the CPA exam. But one of the stories I received from one of the young people that I'm trying to encourage to go on for a master's degree was kind of heartfelt. She said, "I can't go on for a master's degree because my family wants to send one of my cousins. We don't have the means. I'm the first generation to go to college in my entire family. And I've got to go to work so I can help provide monies for my cousin to go to school now." So money is an object, okay, but the desire is not a question. Okay? And those are going to be the people who will be the future of our profession. Okay? So we need to do things to enhance then the opportunities, and one of them is the advanced placement exam. We are this close to finalizing an agreement with the College Board for an accounting advanced placement exam. Hopefully within this year, we'll make a major announcement. One of the things you should know is the College Board is in deep financial stress. Deep financial stress. The ACT is eating their lunch, so to speak, because they hold the SAT. And they've had even to move their headquarters to another location because of the financial stress. Okay? First, academic exposure, following up on advanced placement and so on. It can happen anywhere, but the depth and the breadth of that exposure it differs across the different venues where it can happen. Okay? Here's the perception of accountancy by the public. It's mechanical, it's black and white, there's a right and wrong, there's never any doubt of the answer because we draw a double underline underneath it when we get done. Okay? It goes in the top and it comes out financial statements. The reality, though, is that we as accountants are trying to support the prosperous world's economies as well as our own economy. Okay? We're trying to help make informed decisions through better educating accountancy and business students. Okay? We want to change that black and white thought into a first course that looks like what's on the right-hand side, ends up in good informed decisions by capturing economic activity, making good accountancy judgments, informing management and so on, and then eventually circling back to improving that judgmental process. We've got a task force called the Pathway Vision Model that created this and other things. The movement is starting to take place. Textbooks are now adopting this Pathways Vision Model. Okay? Okay. And we're developing curriculum models to support that. And those are all guiding our process as we move forward. Okay. I'll go to a couple other things. The straw man educational model. This is a thread. We call it the thread. Young people, when they come to school, believe everything is black and white, right and wrong. As we all know in this room, as one moves through their accounting education into their careers and into upper levels and so on, that thread is not woven as tight as you move from left to right as it is when you're on the left side of that thread. And the difference is what we call professional judgment. And professional judgment comes with experience, and lots of experience and maturity. And so we overlay that Pathways Vision Model over that as we design curriculum and deliver curricula to the young people who are going to enter our profession. And we've got task forces working on the common body of knowledge, working on signature pedagogy, and working on technology. And one of the things I'll share with you, just from the insights that I've gotten in 2 months at the University of North Texas, employers want people that are competent in technologies, Excel, Access, databases, you name it. The biggest constraint that I've identified, and it's not just picking on the University of North Texas faculty, is the faculty are not competent to deliver and use the technologies. We've got to retool the faculty so they're equally up to speed as the accounting students themselves. Okay. North Texas, under my suggestion, is now requiring Microsoft certification in Excel of all graduates. It's going to take 2 or 3 years, okay, to get people up to speed. And it's not being gee whiz application, it's applications that are focused on objectives that need to be accomplished on the job. So what will we teach our students and where in the curriculum and how should we teach it? It'll be decided by those who are the future generations of the accounting professorate. Too few, not enough who have credibility and can walk, talk, and chew the gum in front of the classroom. All right. So what can state societies do, such as the Tennessee CPA Society and other state societies? Get involved as a society member in your college or department, accountancy, business advisory boards, respectively. You don't understand what powers you have. Okay. Partly because you probably don't understand the decision-making processes in universities. You do understand they're slow, but you don't understand the process, even though it's slow. You can have tremendous influence through your relationships and contacts that lead up to trustees and regents and so on, who can help encourage decisions to be made in our universities in this country. Be active. Okay. You can assist us with the advanced placement effort. It's going to take a community of interested practitioners to help through the 50 or so states that we hope to have offering advanced placement in high schools. It's not going to be taught pencil and paper anymore. It's going to actually, if we achieve what we want, it's going to be taught using technology into the classroom. Because one of the impediments we know is we don't have enough qualified accountancy or bookkeeping, I hate to use that term, educators in high school to be able to deliver the high quality program that needs to be delivered. And we don't want it to be second rate. And it's going to require people like yourselves in this room to help us with that effort and your involvement. So if you want to go out and see anything about the Pathways Commission, we have our own website, pathwayscommission.org. So open it up to any questions or observations you might have of me in my remarks. None? I've exhausted you? Or you've accepted the challenge to serve? Okay. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, George. You've given us a lot to think about. We have a bright future, as George has given us a path to get there. So I encourage you to look at the Pathways Commission. It's a lot of very meaningful information there, and I think you'll enjoy it. Thank you again for being here today. Have a great afternoon.